Like for me, throughout my own life, I've always been more of a combat sports leaning guy, right? Because man, my first dream job was being a Power Ranger, right? That didn't work out, right? Because obviously I'm not a Power Ranger, but that kind of branched off into different interests I had. Like I was obsessed with like watching Bruce Lee movies and watching kung fu movies growing up. I'd watch them with my mom. I'd watch them with my dad. I was obsessed with Wu Tang Clan a little bit. I ain't gonna lie. And really, the RZA is the reason that I started producing music. I was watching anime, and then the backdrop for anime, the backdrop for like Afro Samurai, the soundtrack, the score, it was done by RZA. And that's really what made me want to become a music producer. That in the background, the 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 score, the soundtrack for Kill Bill being done by the RZA. Like that was something that really blew my mind because I loved Kill Bill. But for me, I've never been super athletic. That's never really been my thing. But I was tough, had a strong mind, and I could hit hard. So for me, I gravitated towards combat sports, right? When I was about maybe 7 years old or 8 years old, so maybe eight, maybe nine, eight or nine, I got into Taekwondo. And I loved Taekwondo when I was into it, right? But my parents, my mom at the time, she had to move somewhere else. And just the price of it and the moving and all that situation. I was moving around so much as a kid. I never got time to really plant roots down and get cemented into a martial art the way I wanted to. See, my love for Power Rangers kind of branched off into my love for martial arts in general and my love for music. And it's kind of interesting to express how my love for music kind of stemmed from my upbringing, where when I was a kid, I was listening to a lot of Tupac, listening to a lot of Michael Jackson, listening to a lot of Stevie Wonder, listening to the Parliament Funkadelic, you know, listening to Donny Hathaway, listening to Frankie Beverly and Maze, because you got to understand, I got old head parents. Listening to No Limit, listening to the Dog Pound. There's really a lot of what I grew up on. Listening to Jay Z. But for me, that artistic side, the way that anime worked, or the way that like Power Rangers worked, with that colorful artistic side and that Japanese influence, it's like love anime. Most artists that are blurred artists, right? Like some of my favorite blurred artists are like Frank Ocean. I remember he'd been my favorite artist since January 1st, 2012. Frank Ocean, and he was probably already my favorite artist before then. But that's the day I said set to say, okay, 2012 first are still the things I enjoy. So it's like for me, those are my favorites in those particular fields. Real Sweatshirt still my favorite rapper, right? Like I did a live reaction to his last album that came out. I thought the shit was fire. And Frank Ocean still my favorite artist. The nigga don't drop no fucking music though. I understand he go through stuff and he got his own plans and path in life. But these things ended up sprouting into my love for martial arts even deeper. I remember when I was 12, I read the Tao of Jeet Kune Do. The art of the intercepted fist. I remember reading that book when I was about 12 years old. That was amazing to me. It really was. Watching all those movies, hearing the kung fu movie influence over Wu-Tang beats and different artists who would use these things to like have this vibe, these sonics in their music. And I remember when I was 13, I got my ass beat by this boxer. And after that, I said, I need to know how to fight. So I used to have my little fight club, my little clique. We would bang it out. That's kind of how you release testosterone when you ain't getting no pussy. You got to fight niggas. You know what I mean? This is kind of how it works. But my love for martial arts, my love for combat, my love for music, my love for anime, those things, they just grew. I remember being 14 going on 15, or it might have been, no, it was 15 going on 16 right now. Got into boxing. I was in the drum line at the time in the band at school. And it was pretty dope. And that's what I was doing. But at that time, like boxing was very therapeutic for me in my life and in my experiences. I remember when I first started boxing, I started watching this anime called Hajime no Ippo. And Hajime no Ippo was my show, right? Now I'm a lifelong anime fan, but watching Hajime no Ippo was something that really added a whole nother element to my game, because when I first started boxing, I was really emulating a lot of my style off of Mike Tyson. And as you know, the main character of Hajime no Ippo, Ippo Makina Uchi, his style is modeled after Mike Tyson. Right. So I would watch that anime and I learned some stuff. Eventually I started getting into some other boxers like Sugar Ray Leonard and James Toney, Mike McCallum, Gerald McClellan. And my love for boxing just flourished. Because at first I was an MMA guy. Before I started boxing, I was in MMA, but it was too far away and it was too expensive to keep going on a regular basis. So when my ride to go out to the MMA gym had to start soccer season, it was kind of like I couldn't keep boxing. I mean, I couldn't keep training MMA, mixed martial arts. Back then, we used to do, we mostly would train in jiu-jitsu and Muay Thai. That's mostly what we were training. But when I started boxing, it's like my skills with my hands went to a whole nother level. And I just fell in love with boxing. I did. It was just a whole vibe and experience for me. A whole vibe and experience. I went back, studied old fighters. Because you go back in time, you see the Willie Peps, right? You see the Archie Moores, right? You see the Cobras. And by Cobras, I mean the Boulder City Cobra, Tommy Hearns. You see the Cobra, Carl Froch. Because that's probably around the time I started watching when Carl Froch was still fighting. There's another Cobra. I'm trying to remember his name. Charles something. Charles something. I forgot it. No, Ezra Charles. I'm watching Ezra Charles. I went back deep into my history and dedicated myself like a historian. So although I had a coach, I was doing a lot of research on my own, and I would study, come back to the gym with things I studied on my own, and my style got pretty good. But although I was training to fight in the amateurs. I thought about the pros, but I wanted to be a coach more than I wanted to be a fighter. I just love to fight, and I wanted to be in that environment, and I wanted to have validity to being a coach. Like, I may not have been a professional boxing champion, right? But they know about me when it comes to how I get down in the ring in the city that I fought out of. They know about me. and I had amateur boxing fights, and I was undefeated. Not a lot of fights, but I was undefeated. And to me, I felt that gave me some validity. So at 19 years old, I was the assistant coach in my boxing gym, right? Community boxing gym, just a program in the community. If you know about the Weed and Seed, Touch the Gloves boxing program in Florence, South Carolina. That's what I was fighting out of. It was closer, nearby, and it was also not only close nearby, right? But it was also a lot cheaper to go to. It was supposed to cost like $10 a month, but I ended up not getting charged a lot of the times because a lot of times I was helping coaching. But I was very dedicated. I worked my ass off to get to the point where, of course, I was doing my road work, and I became like the best boxer in the gym, even though we had pros. Now that wasn't a forever thing, but by the time I was no longer interested in continuing to pursue that path, and a lot of that was for like religious reasons. By the time that happened, no one had replaced me as the best boxer in the gym. So I would just come in, I would coach, you know, especially on days where my head coach, he wouldn't want to come in or he had other things going on. Then I'll take the reins. I would work with younger fighters, older fighters, fighters my age, pros, amateurs, retired. And I loved it. That's kind of how I became Coach Brodie, right? Well, really, Coach Brodie is a combination of just being a coach, right? And I'm a boxing coach first and foremost, right? But this extended into other areas, extended into other areas. I'm a boxing coach first and foremost, right? That's what I have the most experience with. That's what I have the most time and energy into, the most investment in is boxing, right? Although I had a good bit of time and energy invested into being a boxing coach, I was also an artist at the same time. So I'm a music producer, rapper, singer, songwriter. I do a lot of different things. And I made my stage name Brodie Dharma. Brodie meaning brotherly love, right? And Dharma meaning eternal, right? Because it really came from, I remember watching Hidden Colors, the Tariq Nasheed film, that documentary that came out that had like Shahrazad Ali, had some other heavyweights in the Black conscious community. And they were telling the story of Bodhidharma, right? The black man who invented Kung Fu in like China, India, somewhere around that area in Asia a long time ago. And I thought that the name Bodhidharma was so dope. So I was like, you know what? How about I be Brodie Dharma? And it just fit because it's eternally brotherly love, right? So it's like I like to hit people with my music. I like to hit people with the deep lines. And one thing I made a vow of back when I was 16, I was like, I don't want to just talk about saying deep stuff and not actually say anything deep, because that's something I noticed with a lot of rappers that I saw is like they'll be referring to something deep, but never say anything deep themselves. It's just rapping about rapping. So I was like, you know what? I want to do that. I want to say something that's actually deep, that has substance. But I also didn't want to separate myself so much from the general view and perspective of the everyday man that I'm just so heavenly minded I'm no earthly good. So having that mentality, I decided for myself, I was like, you know what? Let me talk about these things that relate to the common man experience, right? And then there's a period in my life where I said, I need to tap into this dominant energy that I've been repressing for a long time. So I just use my stage name as a persona to pour that dominant energy into. And by making my stage name a persona for me to pour that dominant energy into, a safe space, I started dealing with women out of Brodie. And it was a dope experience. It has been a dope experience. And then afterwards, start integrating that back into my everyday personality, just who I am as a man, who I am as a person. And just during that time, the experiences that I'd have, I'd tell them to my homeboys. And then they would want to come to me for advice. And when they came to me for advice, sometimes I'd give them that advice. And when it worked, they would hit me up. And when they'd hit me up, they'd be like, hey, man, it worked. I appreciate you for the advice. And they just send me some money. And that's how I went from being Brodie Dharma to Coach Brodie. Still Brodie Dharma when it comes to my music. But when it comes to just a social identity, you just see me as Coach. Just call me Coach. Because the funny thing is, like, a lot of my ideologies, believe it or not, they really stem from some of my spiritual and religious beliefs. I went through a journey in my own life. And through that spiritual journey, I found certain truths. And within those truths and things that I found, I realized the importance of masculinity, the importance of dominance, the importance of channeling that, concentrating that into a positive format. And around that time is where I found, like, the manosphere, the red pill community. Of course, I wouldn't agree with everything. Nigga, I agree with enough. So I didn't fight it, man. I just, like, you know what? I'm listening to this stuff, come up with my own theories, my own ideas. I implement them. Might listen to some other content creators to get a little bit deeper on it, to get more understanding, to get more perspective. And the stuff I was doing, it worked. It worked for me. Shared it with some of my homies because, I'm a blurred to the core. I'm a blurred to the core beat, right? And when I would share that information with them, they'll use it and it'll work for them too. So I just started coaching like that too. Because once you're talking to enough people and enough people are trying to, they need your time, they need your advice, they need your wisdom. After a while, you have to make money off of your time. Just as a man, as an individual, time is money. So it may not bust them over the head with the prices, but at least when somebody invests for the knowledge and information that you're sharing, they have a certain attachment to the information you're sharing because of the investment they're making in order to get it. Right? This is how a lot of things work in life. That's why the game ain't free. Because sometimes people who don't invest to get the game, they squander it. They misuse and misrepresent it because they have no investment or attachment to it. So then when somebody misuses the game that you give them, then it's like, you can't be mad at me if you misuse what I told you. Or if you do it wrong, you could have paid that money and got the information. Right? That's just how it works sometimes. But just, there's certain things about boxing I love. Right? And that's kind of where the dominant ego comes in at. Right? You have to find a safe space and a consensual space to enact your dominance. You don't want to just be trying to dominate every single person you meet in your daily life. That's weird. It's weird as fuck. Right? You want to be able to have certain avenues in your life where it benefits you to express your dominance, where that benefits you. And for me, two of those main areas that I really enjoyed, and I have enjoyed, and I do enjoy, is sexually and in the ring. Sparring with another man. Mano y mano. Me versus him. This is what it is. We agreed to this. I'm about to put hands on you. It's something I love. To be able to hit another man and he has the involuntary bodily functions of being hurt or of dropping to the canvas or of going to sleep. I enjoy it. I'm not gonna lie to you. Of course, you want to be smart about your sparring. Of course, you don't want to just be giving motherfuckers brain damage, but at the same time, it is what it is. You know what you in there for, and they gave me an outlet for that dominance. And a lot of men, they don't have an outlet for that desire to be dominant. And that shit gets repressed. And just like my study of shadow integration, a lot of this came from my study of different aspects of psychology, like attachment theory, Jungian psychology, all those different things. Through my study of those things, I gained a lot of knowledge, a lot of information, a lot of knowledge and a lot of information. And I took that stuff and I integrated it into what I was doing. And what you got to understand is this: when it comes to the shadow, is that if you don't give an outlet for what's in your shadow, that it's going to, life is going to choose one for you, and it may not be the one you want. It may not be something that's right. So I don't shy away from my own desire to be in control, my own desire to dominate. I just know that there's a time and a place for everything. But there's a lot of things I learned in boxing, right? Just being cold, calm, collected, and just cold in the ring, right? Not getting emotional, seeing how emotion and someone who emotionally desires to dominate you because their ego's hurt, how that causes them to make mistakes. It's the same thing in the dating world. Right? You got to be cool, calm, collected. If you want some masculine dominant shit, if your desire is to dominate, you might see some openings, you might see some things, but you can't be gun shy to do that. Sometimes in life you're gonna take rejection. Sometimes in life you're gonna take a hit. It is what it is, but you get right. And then when you think about the game like a coach, you have a different perspective altogether about the game, right? It's like you the coach, and that wedding ring is the prize, right? That relationship is the prize, but you're the coach, right? That's a different perspective. That means that you're preparing that woman for that position that she wants to play. If she want to keep it in the amateur, she can stay in the amateur. If she want to keep it in the novice, she can keep it at the novice. But either way, she got to pay her fees. But still, it's a matter of this right here. You're training and coaching the woman you deal with to be the best version of herself that's going to be compatible with you. Self-actualization is part of that process. If that's not included, then you're just holding them back. That's just some real shit. So when you understand these different aspects of like sociosexual dynamics, these different aspects of the game, you start to have a different mindset, a different perspective. This is Coach Brodie, a little boxing talk, and also just talk about life and other things like that. I'm out.